Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namine Namaste Saraswate Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarine Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktavinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everyone. Ooh, now we have 6 videos. Now the peer pressure is growing. I like it. Thank you all for obliging to my humble desire to see you all. So, today we'll continue our discussion of chapter 4 and conclude chapter 4 as we be talking about the importance of knowledge in our progress in devotional service. So today we'll speak quite directly about the specific powers of transcendental knowledge and how one is directly understood to achieve and acquire this knowledge. So chapter 4 is broken up into these sections here, and we had discussing last week that this process of sacrifice, it is a required activity in the human form of life in order to avoid being a thief. Such a strong statement Krishna makes, but it's the fact. He is the proprietor of everything, and so if we do not do sacrifice, we are a thief, and thus great suffering and misery ensues. And so this chapter, the last section that we discussed, was talking about various types of sacrifice. And all sacrifice is meant to ultimately bring one to self-realization. And what is self-realization? To know that I am part and parcel of Krishna. That is it. And so the more knowledge we have in our sacrifice, more knowledge about I am part and parcel of Krishna, the better the result. The more potent the result of that sacrifice. But all sacrifice that are enjoined in the Vedas are meant to bring one ultimately to the highest form of sacrifice, and that is devotional service. So Krishna now is going to explain specifically how to get knowledge. We've been talking about how through detached action, one acquires 2 things: knowledge and purification. Purification of the material contaminants within the heart, and knowledge of the self and Krishna. So that is the result of this Nishkam Karma Yoga. And the more knowledge we have of Krishna, ultimately to Bhagavan realization, brings us devotional service. So now Krishna is going to speak very specifically, and we can say, in one of the most important verses in the Bhagavad Gita. We have to be careful with that statement because everything Krishna says is absolute and perfect, but we understand this to be one of the foundational verses in devotional service. So Krishna says, just try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. Inquire from him submissively and render service unto him. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So Krishna is saying that try to learn the truth by approaching a spiritual master. So this is a very important instruction. Krishna is giving this knowledge, but yet he's still saying you must approach a spiritual master. So why? Prabhupada says in the opening statement of the purport, his opening statement of the purport and his concluding statement of purports are all often the summation and the most important points. He wrote his purports with great design and precision. So he says here, the path to spiritualization is undoubtedly difficult. Right? So Krishna knows that this path is not so easy. And so we should seek help. And this is yet another verse about how to get right. We heard about Evam Parampara Praptim, how the great saintly kings heard this knowledge in disciplic succession. And now we're getting very specific information of how we individually should acquire this knowledge. You know, studying on our own will not bring the same success Srila Prabhupada speaks about in the purport. We need a teacher. Just like we have a teacher for all things. We go to college, all the textbooks are available in the bookstores. You could just read the textbooks. But still, we need someone to guide us in the process of studying. And that is why we pay so much money for material education. So in spiritual life also, one needs a teacher. One needs a guide. And that guide is our spiritual master. So then Srila Prabhupada describes who is a bona fide guru. It is one that is in disciplic succession. A person in disciplic succession can convey the message of the Lord as it is to his disciple. So only Guru has the complete knowledge. Only Krishna has complete knowledge. And thus the Guru must be coming in disciplic succession from Krishna, directly connected to him, to get this transcendental knowledge. Because no one can manufacture or imagine their own process of spirituality. Right? Krishna is the origin, and he is the original Guru. So our knowledge that we obtain must come from Krishna through disciplic succession to us. And this is very important for us. So no one can establish this on our own. We talked about this many times. The Guru is the postman, delivering the message of the Lord, not creating the message. Right? So now, the very instructive aspect of this verse that Krishna gives us is so merciful to us that he explains exactly how we should approach the Guru. So not just approach a Guru, but how. And he says that this pariprashnena sevaya, right? That one should inquire. But he says inquire submissively. This pariprashnena. That means submissive inquiry. So the inquiry is critical, but we must be in a humble mood, in a mood of wanting to learn, not to challenge or to show off one's knowledge. Just like when a student enters the classroom, if they enter with the mood of wanting to learn, then the teacher speaking has results. But if another student enters that same room, and their mood is to challenge, or thinking, I know everything, or just doesn't care, then though the words are the same from the teacher between student A and student B, the result is very different. So, Guru can give many, many classes, but why the result is different for some disciples and for others? It is because of this submissive mood, right? So this is the key that we must have. And Krishna is telling us here that we should not blindly follow. One must inquire. And Arjuna is showing us this, right? He is inquiring over and over and over again in this Bhagavad Gita. How many questions he's already asked to this point? So many. So we should not blindly blindly follow. We should actually inquire. And when we inquire submissively, as Arjuna did, he said, as a soul surrendered unto you, right? He is surrendered to Krishna, and he is asking, what is best for me? Right? We even discussed previously, the art of his asking questions are so perfect. He doesn't ask Krishna to sanction his desires. Krishna, is it okay if I don't fight this war and go to the forest? He says, no. Arjuna asks, Krishna, you tell me what's best for me. And that is the mood of submission, right? Because when the Guru sees that the disciple is submissive in their inquiry, then the Guru is willing to impart knowledge. Until one is willing to hear, willing to surrender, otherwise the Guru will just move on to the next disciple who is interested to hear, right? So Guru, like Krishna, he reciprocates according to the degree of our surrender. So Prabhupada makes this very powerful statement in the purport. I'm just trying to find it again. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. It's a really wonderful statement Srila Prabhupada makes right in the middle of the purport, about maybe 2/3 away. Inquiries and submission constitute the proper combination for spiritual understanding. And there's another post-it worthy statement that we can put in our house somewhere, because it really gives us the combination. And this is what Krishna himself is explaining, how we should receive it. So very beautiful instruction. So we have pariprashnena is the one approach, submissive inquiry. And the second aspect of approach, sevaya. Rendering service to the Guru is critical. Why? Guru is giving us the greatest of all gifts to take us back home, back to Godhead. Right? So what then is our reciprocation for that gift? It is that service. And Srila Prabhupada says we should render service like a menial servant, he says in the purport. Like a menial servant. When we go to school, university, we pay some tuition. Right? That is our reciprocation for that knowledge. It doesn't come free. We have to pay for it. So the service to Guru is our opportunity to reciprocate. And what kind of service does Guru like? The ultimate service to Guru is assisting the Guru in their mission. And what is the mission of the spiritual master? To save the conditioned soul from suffering in the material world. And to impart knowledge. To share this knowledge. And the Guru endures so much effort and difficulty to do this. And so the disciple renders service to the Guru by facilitating in whatever ways, whatever means they have to support this mission. And that's Srila Prabhupada. He rendered service to his Guru by following that instruction and coming to the West. And Srila Prabhupada's disciples did anything and everything. They sacrificed their entire lives. They were willing to die for Srila Prabhupada, taking on whatever was required in order to serve him. And this is the mood. And as grihastas, when we get to practical service, sometimes we're not able to, directly render service to our Guru. We're not traveling with them, not doing this. And so how do we render service? We still must render service, because Krishna says, sevaya. So we render service by, again, following his instructions. Whatever the Guru asks us to do, that is service. Whatever your Guru asks, we should follow to a T. And knowing what services he engages us in our local area. Offering Guru Dakshina is an important part of service. As grihastas, how do we make the time in the office part of Guru Seva? By, offering Guru Dakshina. Even Krishna himself and Balram, after going to the ashram of Sandipani Muni, at the end of their studies, they offered Guru Dakshina. So these are different ways that we can render service. And it is important. And the beautiful aspect of Sevaya is that not only is it our responsibility in reciprocation, but we are actually the prime beneficiary of that seva, of that service. Because when we learn to serve Guru with sincerity and love, then we will someday learn how to serve Krishna with sincerity and love. And so actually Guru accepts our service as a means to train us on how to serve Krishna. Not to fulfill their own sense desires, but they accept it as a service to teach us how to serve Krishna. So by learning to serve Guru, one can ultimately learn to serve Krishna. And this is the beautiful relationship that is present and manifest between guru and disciple, as designed and structured by the original source of all knowledge and imparter of knowledge, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna. A very, very powerful verse. And the qualification of the guru, or why they can serve and save us, Krishna says, Tattva Darshinaha. Because they have seen the truth, they can reveal it to us. Just like if someone is searching for a treasure, a buried treasure. Well, if someone has seen that treasure and knows where it is, then they can show it to us. Well, what is the treasure that the guru has seen? They have seen Krishna. They understand Krishna. And so because they have seen it, they can show it to us. And that is important. Right? So the guru's reciprocation is based on the disciple's desire. When the disciple has genuine desires, having passed many tests, Srila Prabhupada says, then he imparts pure knowledge unto us. Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito. And this knowledge is passed to us into our heart. We see in the Guru Vandana prayers. It is a spiritual medium by which this knowledge is transmitted. It is not a material medium. Sometimes we mistake that, I don't get to speak to my spiritual master. Or, I didn't get a chance to see him this time, or I didn't get to ask this question, or something like that we sometimes feel. But that is not the means by which knowledge can be received by the Guru. Actually, it is a spiritual means. Every day we can speak to the Guru and inquire. And if we actually inquire this way, that knowledge will come. Divya Gyan Hriday Prakashito. It comes. And some of you have had experience with this. And this is the means to inquire and render service. So don't let physical proximity define our ability to do pariprashnena sevaya. We should do every day. Because every day we are living on the mercy of Guru. And so it is not at all in any way defined by physical proximity. If you see our past acharyas, Srila Prabhupada only met Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur a handful of times. Only a handful of times. Many, or some of the great Srila Prabhupada's disciples never even met Srila Prabhupada. And yet, they are fully surrendered to Srila Prabhupada. Narottam Das Thakur had very limited interaction with Lokanath Goswami, but extraordinary learning from Jiva Goswami. And like this, you see through our parampara, Chaitanya Mahaprabhu with Ishvarapuri only met a handful of times. So throughout our Guru parampara, we see it is not the physical proximity that determines the connectivity to Guru. It is a spiritual medium. So whatever moments we may have had with our spiritual master, we should consider it the greatest of all treasures. But understand that if we don't have another moment ever again, nothing is lost, because the medium to connect is via this spiritual medium. And this is what Krishna is telling us. So let us, be engaged enthusiastically in Pariprashnena Sevaya every day of our life. And then this knowledge will come. And what is the result of this knowledge now? Krishna says in the 35th verse, having obtained real knowledge from a self-realized soul, you will never fall again into such illusion. For by this knowledge, you will see that all living beings are but the part of the Supreme, or in other words, that they are mine. I love this statement by Krishna. So what happens when we take shelter of the Guru? We obtain real knowledge and never again fall into illusion. And what is the knowledge we need to know? Krishna says, you will see that all living beings are but part of the Supreme. or other words, that they are mine. We are Krishna's. This knowledge reveals that we are Krishna's. We are part and parcel of Krishna. And it is from the self-realized soul, the Guru, that we can understand this. So Srila Prabhupada speaks about Maya in the purport, interestingly, because obviously we have the word never fall into illusion in the verse. So what is Maya? Ma means not, and Ya means this, not this. So this Maya, Prabhupada explains, is the sense of our existence separate from Krishna. Any sense or perception that we are separated from Krishna, that is Maya. Because we are never separated from Krishna. It is not possible. And the entire goal of the Bhagavad Gita is to rid ourselves of this Maya, of this illusion that we think we are separate from Krishna. We are eternally connected. How? Because everything we do, we are dependent on the Supreme Lord. We are either connected to Him directly or indirectly through His material energies, His para or apara shakti. And that He'll explain in the 7th chapter. So why does Maya, this illusion, make us feel separated from Krishna? Because we were so foolish and had a desire to be separate from Krishna. We wanted to experience life separate from Him, but it's not possible. So in order to make the feeling like that, Krishna empowered His great Maya Shakti to create this illusion. So Arjuna thought his relationship with his family was more important than the relationship with Krishna, due to Maya. Of course, he was being put in this role. He was not overcome by Maya like us, but to help us see the example, he carried forward this mood. So he temporarily forgot his relationship with Krishna. So that is what we have done. So the real knowledge is knowing we are part and parcel of Krishna. Krishna says, you are mine. Actually, it's so sweet how loving Krishna is. He is taking us and saying, you are mine, my dear child. Very sweet. But with our ego, if we see that, who are you to say I'm yours? But actually, if we see, it is the sweetest of statements by Krishna. So this again is the essence of the Bhagavad Gita, to explain to us we are part and parcel of Krishna, and that our eternal occupation is only one, to serve Krishna. All of our suffering is due to not knowing this real purpose of life. That is the cause of all of our suffering. Because without knowing this, without this knowledge, we engage in so many material activities. And Krishna says, we are His part and parcel. So part means we have the same qualities as Krishna, because we come from Krishna. And parcel, we are separated. We are individual. We are eternally individuals, as Krishna has already said. So the living entity has really one of two choices. Either we're going to serve the internal energy of Krishna, the superior energy, or we're going to serve Krishna's external energy. But either way, we're going to be directly in service to Krishna. But with knowledge, when one serves Krishna, one achieves this ultimate result of never being into illusion. And we'll see in a couple of verses what the result is, this extraordinary happiness. Right? So when we say serving the external energy, what does that mean? That means sense gratification. I'm going to try to enjoy this material world on my own. Right? So this illusion, again, it arises around our forgetfulness of the eternal relationship with Krishna. But once one engages in devotional service, one gets immediately relief from all this illusion. So Srila Rupa Goswami says, Klesha Agni, the first result of this devotional service of sadhana bhakti, Klesha, all the distresses are burned to ashes. We'll see the same analogy coming up in a minute. So, again, perfect knowledge, then Prabhupada says, perfect knowledge is knowing that Krishna is our supreme shelter. And then at the end of the purport, he defines liberation. And he says that liberation means to be situated in one's constitutional position as an eternal servant of Krishna. That is liberation. To be situated in one's constitutional position. So one becomes liberated as soon as they have this knowledge and they begin to act in it. So the mood we are trying to come from is, I am tired of trying to live separate from you, Krishna. I'm tired, suffering so much pain and misery. Now I just want to regain my original consciousness and serve you, no longer serve myself. And that is the mood that hopefully we'll come to as we progress in this knowledge. So Krishna then says, even if you are considered to be the most sinful of all sinners, when you are situated in a boat of transcendental knowledge, you will be able to cross over the ocean of miseries. So what is the result of this knowledge? What is the fruit? Even the most sinful can cross over the ocean of material miseries. Wow. Very powerful. How strong this knowledge is. An ocean is very difficult to cross. You need a very, capable boat. This transcendental knowledge or Krishna consciousness is the boat that can cross us this vast ocean. And Prabhupada says, the boat of Krishna consciousness is very simple, but at the same time most sublime. Right? Because simply knowing I am part and parcel of Krishna, it leads me to devotional service. The part must serve the whole. And when we do, no more sinful reactions, and thus no more suffering. But more importantly, not just no suffering, there is the experience of transcendental spiritual bliss. And this is the result of having this knowledge. And the whole life changes. But until then, we go on trying to enjoy the material world under the influence of Maya, the illusion. In the beginning of this verse now, as we transition to the next two verses, Krishna says, even if, and Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur comments that this even if, it's being spoken, we use this word even if to imply something is happening despite a reason it shouldn't, right? Even if it is cold, I'll go outside. Even though I shouldn't go outside because it's cold, I'll go outside. So we say, even if. So Krishna or Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is saying, if someone is so sinful, how can they be purified? How can the heart be purified? And without purification, of course, how can one develop knowledge? And even if he's developed the knowledge, then how can one act so sinfully? So Vishnu Chakravarti Thakur is posing these questions. So Krishna says here, he's already answered, even the most sinful can cross, and now he's giving the specifics. As a blazing fire turns firewood to ashes, O Arjuna, so does the fire of knowledge burn to ashes all reactions of material activities. So what exactly happens? The knowledge burns to ashes all of our sinful reactions from material activities. And Prabhupada talks about here both the good and the bad karma, pap and punya, because both are binding to the material world. They both lead to another birth, which means death, old age, disease, adhyatmika, adibhautika, adidevik. So Prabhupada says that they burn both. Right? So once we have knowledge, we start devotional service. And by doing devotional service, aham tam sarva papebhyo, all the sinful reactions are nullified, are eradicated. Of course, by doing devotional service, one is now engaged in a higher activity and stops doing more sinful activities. And sometimes we wonder, well, I've started doing devotional service, why I'm still getting reactions? And Prabhupada would give the analogy of the fan. When you unplug the fan, It still spins for some time, but it is slowing down. It is slowing down because the power has been cut. And we know in a few moments it will stop. Well, we have been sinning for millions of lifetimes. And now, having taken to devotional service, we have unplugged that sin. So yes, there is some residual still coming, but very small. And in time factor, very shortly, it will stop. And Rupa Goswami gives, and Prabhupada comments in this verse, about the types of sinful reactions. We know we have the fructified sinful reactions, the prarabdha karma. We have the unfructified, the aparabdha karma. Right? The reaction from every material activity is both aparabdha and prarabdha karma. And we know that only bhakti can eradicate both the prarabdha and aparabdha karma, as well as the bijam and kutam, that's desire, the taste, the proclivity to sin. And again, what is the root cause of all sinful activities? Ignorance, not having knowledge that I am part and parcel of Krishna. So it all ties back to knowledge. So this bhakti that results from this knowledge is the means to become free from all these sinful reactions. And it is the only process, no prayaschitta process can do, which is cleanse the heart of these sinful tendencies. So now 38. In this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Such knowledge is the mature fruit of all mysticism. And one who has become accomplished in the practice of devotional service enjoys this knowledge within himself in the due course of time. So Krishna now is saying, he is the creator of the entire universe, material and spiritual. He is the creator. So he knows what is in every corner of his creation. And he knows what is the ability of every aspect of his creation. And he says, in this world, there is nothing so sublime and pure as transcendental knowledge. Then why are we searching with so much effort to find sublime things in this material world? Krishna is saying so simply, there is nothing as sublime as this transcendental knowledge. Why? Because knowing I am part and parcel of Krishna and rendering service, this Krishna consciousness leads to Krishna, who is the reservoir of all pleasures. And thus one achieves eternal happiness. Imagine if we all had faith in this statement. There would be no conflict in the world. There would be no turbulence. Because no one would be searching, trying to take your things, thinking it'll give them happiness. No one will try to take my things, thinking it'll give me happiness. No one will destroy this earth, trying to enjoy one's senses. Because one will know there's none of that's going to compare to the sublime experience of devotional service resulting from bhakti. From knowledge. So I have in this schematic the aspect of how knowledge leads one to bhakti. So this knowledge that I am part and parcel of Krishna, the only logical conclusion then is practice devotional service. And the mature fruit of practicing devotional service is perfect knowledge. So they fuel each other. The more bhakti I do, the more knowledge is revealed in my heart. The more my heart is purified. And the more knowledge I have that I am part and parcel of Krishna, the more devotional service. So this is the sublime fruit. It is actually the mature fruit of all mysticism, meaning all different processes. So by the practice of bhakti, one enjoys the result of this transcendental knowledge. That is eternal bliss. But the lack of knowledge or ignorance, that is the cause then of suffering. So the presence of this knowledge and action leads to happiness. The lack of this knowledge leads to suffering. Option A, option B. Krishna says in this verse, in the due course of time. What is he reminding us here? Be patient, my friend. Be patient. The knowledge will be revealed gradually as one practices detached work. And thus we should not prematurely renounce, as he has been explaining to Arjuna since the beginning of chapter 3. And for us practicing in devotional service, be patient. We've been going for many, many lifetimes separate from Krishna in Maya. A few years of a hand in a bead bag. Give it some time, but it will work. But remember, there's nothing so sublime. So what do we need to receive this knowledge? I approach Guru. I'm rendering service. I'm submissive. I have knowledge. It's the boat that can cross me over this ocean. It can burn all my sinful reactions, burn them to ashes. Yes, there's nothing so sublime. I've read it all. But what do I need in order to acquire this knowledge? Well, 3 things. A faithful man who is dedicated to transcendental knowledge and who subdues his senses is eligible to achieve such knowledge. And having achieved it, he quickly attains the supreme spiritual peace. So, 3 qualifications. One must be faithful. We must have faith in this knowledge. Okay? Faith means confidence that if I do a certain action, a desired result will come. That is the broad definition of faith. So what is faith in this context? Prabhupada says, if I serve in Krishna consciousness, I achieve complete perfection. I have faith that Krishna says there is nothing more sublime. Because if I have faith in that statement, then what all my activities will be? Only Krishna consciousness. So why is it that I still have other desires, other activities? I don't have yet full faith in that knowledge. Right? So how to get faith? How to build faith? Well, faith results from devotional service. The more devotional service I do, the experiences of bliss I have, then it increases my faith. And faith leads to knowledge. As Krishna says, a faithful man who is dedicated to this knowledge is eligible to receive such knowledge. So by my faith, this knowledge is revealed to me. What does that knowledge take me to? It shapes my action. I do devotional service. And that devotional service increases faith. And that faith increases knowledge. And like that, the cycle continues. Then the question becomes, well, then how to start? How do we start this process? It is by the unlimited mercy of the devotee of the Lord, who somehow engages us in devotional service, even unknowingly, agnata sukriti, whatever it takes. But once it starts, it is all in Krishna's hands, and it happens. And this is the opportunity we have. Just do something small. Introduce someone and speak to them. And let the results of bhakti build their faith. Let that faith lead to more knowledge, and let that knowledge lead to practice of devotional service. So the second and third aspects of this is dedicated. Right? One must be determined and enthusiastic. Well, that also comes from faith, that the result of this is going to happen. Right? If I know it's going to happen, then I'll be dedicated. And sense control. Right? So, controlling the senses, refraining them from material sense objects. Well, if I have faith that there's nothing else that's sublime, then one's senses become automatically, naturally controlled by the faith in this transcendental knowledge. So seeing how powerful this knowledge is. So Krishna now says, is eligible to achieve such knowledge. Having achieved it, he quickly attains this supreme spiritual peace. Now he says quickly. Wait a minute, is that a contradiction? No. Because what is leading to the quickly achieving this spiritual peace? This faith and determination. When our devotional service, we have strong faith in the goal and we have full knowledge, we pursue it vigorously, dedicatedly, determined enthusiasm. And that determination leads to quick results. Just like if I'm determined in the gym to shape my body, then the results come very quickly. If I am not so determined, they won't come. Get the example that if I knew I'd get $1 million in this box if I chanted my rounds really nicely, does it take much effort to chant our rounds nicely? No, because we have faith in that $1 million. We don't look at it as just sheets of paper. We know it's green. It has little numbers on it. So we have faith that that will lead to some sense enjoyment. I have knowledge of what this $1 million can do. But we know theoretically and actually that what does that $1 million compare to eternal bliss with Krishna and Goloka Vrindavan? Nothing. But why is it that we would be more determined to chant our rounds if there was a box filled with $1 million in front of us? Because we are still developing our faith and knowledge in Goloka Vrindavan, in pure devotional service. But if we really understood, we would have no issues controlling the senses. We would be so determined and so enthusiastic. So this faith is a critical aspect of acquiring this knowledge, and that knowledge brings one to steady devotional service. Okay, so now the final verses of this section. Now, Krishna is going to explain the persons that fail in this process. But the ignorant and faithless persons who doubt the revealed scriptures do not attain God consciousness. They fall down. For the doubting soul, there is happiness neither in this world nor in the next. This is so obvious, so clear. Yet, why doesn't everyone take to it? So now Krishna is explaining that. You can see how Krishna is very systematically explaining all aspects of this knowledge. How to get it, its potency, the result, even how the most sinful can take to it, what the process, the qualifications are for us to do it, how we approach, all the details are given by Krishna here. And now, how one fails. So one who is ignorant, they're just engaged in eating, sleeping, mating, and defending. That is the gross ignorant, completely aloof to all Vedic knowledge, no interest. So they obviously don't acquire transcendental knowledge. But the faithless is the second category that we have to be careful of. They know Shastra, but we don't have faith in the words of Shastra. They're well read, heard many, many different theories of spirituality, of religion, but not sure which one to take to, and thus they take none of them. And they don't solidify their faith that leads them to action. So they hear it all, but there's no faith, and so it doesn't translate into action. Knowledge must lead to action, vigyan, ultimately for it to bear fruits. So, and ultimately this happens because there is no spiritual master in their life to guide them, to instruct them, to give them the mercy of Krishna and build their faith. And the third is the doubter. They actually have some faith in this Shastra. And they understand that, things happen according to the scriptures, but they doubt it. They don't believe it. They just keep on doubting. Will the results really come? Will they really come? So they follow sometimes without faith. So this doubting is the most dangerous, because the doubter can never get help. They already know. So there's nothing more to tell. And it becomes stuck in that position, in that condition. And that's why, we often hear, this terminology, and I think it's His Holiness Ramapad Swami uses is, yeah, but. You ask questions, and and then you hear the answer, and our response is, yeah, but. Yeah, but this. Yeah, but this. And there is those, it doubts. So it is different, of course, from inquiry. There is a level of inquiry that we need, but we should accompany it with some faith in what we are hearing. And then let the experience overrule. But the doubter, the one who is constantly doubting, they are stuck. And they are stuck because they have detached from the material world, knowing it is useless, but they also don't get the fruits from devotional service because they won't practice that. And so they get neither happiness in this world or the next, Krishna says. It is the worst of all situations. At least the ignorant get some fractions of some enjoyment. And so we want to be mindful of avoiding this doubting position. And that is why we are studying so detailed Srila Prabhupada's books, because we are not doubters. Obviously, taking some great endeavor and effort to study Srila Prabhupada's books. So don't confuse doubter with lots of questions. That is not the same. Don't confuse those two things. We should have lots of questions. We should continue to express those questions. That is not a doubter. One is a doubter when one doesn't have faith after hearing everything exhaustively. So don't confuse those two, as it sometimes can be. 41. One who acts in devotional service, renouncing the fruits of his actions, and whose doubts have been destroyed by transcendental knowledge, is situated factually in the self. Thus he is not bound by the reactions of worth, O conqueror of the riches. So how to remove the doubts from the prior verse? Now Krishna speaks. Apply transcendental knowledge to our work. Just do it. By doing devotional service, the doubts will be removed, because there will be results. With knowledge and faith, we do some bhakti that's only going to increase our faith and increase our knowledge. And that'll increase our bhakti. And by the results of bhakti, that'll increase our faith. Just get that cycle going. So if we are in doubts, just do more devotional service. And all those doubts will be removed. As Krishna is saying here. One who acts in devotional service will have these doubts destroyed. And this knowledge, like if I walk into a dark room, I have doubts about what is there. Is this a safe place or an unsafe place for me? But if someone turns on the lights, all my doubts are immediately exhausted. I can see exactly what is in that room. I know. Right? All the unknowns become known by the flip of the switch. And that is why we say, Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurudam Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master opened my eyes with the torch of knowledge. So the Guru just illuminates everything so we can see things as they are. Okay? And we know Krishna is going to speak about how he destroys our doubts with this knowledge. Okay? Dadami buddhi yogam tam. He says, I give you the knowledge. I destroy with a shining lamp of knowledge the darkest of ignorance. He says both these in the 10th chapter, 10th and 11th verses. Okay? So the doubts are destroyed by doing bhakti. They destroyed by acquiring more knowledge, knowing the self, and working in this way. So finally, therefore, the doubts which have arisen in your heart and out of ignorance should be slashed by the weapon of knowledge. Armed with yoga, O Bharata, stand and fight. So Krishna is saying, now you fight. Doubts have been slashed with knowledge. You know what is right and what is wrong, and now act in this knowledge. And this is the beautiful chapter of transcendental knowledge. So Srila Prabhupada summarizes the chapter in his purport very wonderfully. So I'll just summarize this briefly. So, there were two types of sacrifice. One of one's material possessions and one in knowledge of the self. The material sacrifices alone will not help, but coming to self-realization to be able to do perfect sacrifice is the goal. So material sacrifice without knowledge, it leads to material results. But sacrifice with a spiritual objective, meaning to please Krishna, knowing we are his part and parcel, that leads to perfect sacrifice. And there are two types of spiritual knowledge, or two aspects, or levels. One is knowing the self, and the other is knowing Krishna. Knowing the self alone isn't complete, because I have to know, then what is my relationship with the Absolute? So the Jnanis understand I am spirit soul, but they have not yet understood I am part and parcel of Krishna. So this knowledge, transcendental knowledge, we have to have both pieces. Who am I? Who is Krishna? And then what is the relationship between the two? They must come and form. And that constitutes this knowledge. And what is the goal of all the sacrifices? The goal is to rid oneself of ignorance and acquire transcendental knowledge and thus come to self-realization. So the goal of all sacrifice is to self-realize that I am part and parcel of Krishna. There is no other self-realization. The lower sacrifices, the karma kanda sacrifices, pranayams, and mystic yogas, and all these different sacrifices Krishna explained in this chapter. They are meant to bring one to self-realization and thus bhakti. And so how Krishna advises to acquire this knowledge? He says, study under a bona fide guru, with inquiry, submissively, and service. Pariprashnena sevaya. And then one can acquire this knowledge, will lead to perfection of life, Krishna consciousness. So this knowledge again, who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship? And it unlocks everything. It leads to this detached work or devotional service, which leads to knowledge and surrender to Guru. So the self-realization is the key piece of this process. And I just wanted to conclude with one realization I had this morning while chanting. I was thinking that how to understand the power of this knowledge. Well, we know right now, if you had the knowledge to stop this coronavirus, if you had the knowledge to do that, you understood this virus, how it works, and you could stop it, imagine how famous you would become. Imagine how rich you would become. 100 years from now, people would be talking about you. There would be medals named after you and honors. And you would become so powerful by having this knowledge to stop this virus. And no one would forget. You would become the most loved person in the universe because you could rid people of this temporary setback and free them from their so-called misery. So just knowledge of this single small virus can yield such a gigantic material reward. But that reward is nothing compared to knowing who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship. But because we have come in, at least heard it so many times, we underestimate the extraordinary potency of this knowledge. We can understand the potency of knowing how to stop this virus because we have such tangible experience. But actually, that knowledge is nothing in value compared to the knowledge we already have at our fingertips. Who am I? Who is Krishna? And what is my relationship? And if we think about the collective effort that is being put forth right now to acquire this knowledge about this virus, and just think, if a fraction of that effort was put to acquiring this knowledge Krishna has explained in chapter 4, what an amazing result would manifest. So sometimes by putting it in context to something we can touch and feel, it helps us appreciate the extraordinary fortune we have. And so let us not take the frequency of which we have heard, who am I, who is Krishna, and what is my relationship, to in any way dilute the extraordinary potency and power of this knowledge. And let us try to take it sincerely, apply it to our activities, and thus achieve this most amazing result. Okay? Well, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda ki jai. Any comments or questions, corrections, clarifications for today?
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Dandavat Pranam. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna Mati Dandavats.
Yeah, very nice summary class, Prabhu. Very nice. And I like the chart of flow chart of knowledge and the bhakti, knowledge, bhakti, and faith. That's a very nice chart. And your presentation always impressing to me. Thank you very much, Prabhu. Nice class.
Hare Krishna Mati. Thank you.
Hare
God bless you.
Krishna.
Yes.
I have a general question related to chanting Maha Mantra. Chanting while doing daily chores, is it been considered as chanting or devoted time, or just chanting is the right way to go ahead?
So the question is, chanting while doing daily chores, is that the right thing, or is that, should it be more devoted? So we are looking to come to the mood of chanting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, spontaneously. We know Mother Yashoda chanted the glories of Krishna while churning the butter and while doing various household chores. So that is the goal, which is to spontaneously and naturally chant the holy names of the Lord. But in the sadhaka platform, particularly in the Vaidhi sadhana platform, we are still developing this taste for spontaneous chanting. So to develop this mood to spontaneously chant, it is recommended that we take to the process of japa. This japa is a type of meditation. So when we talk about chanting, we want to do dedicated chanting, or only chanting and not doing other activities. That is part of our japa. And so when we speak about, chanting our 16 rounds, that means only focused on japa, not two-handed chanting. One hand on the, vacuum cleaner, one hand on the bead bag, or one hand on the cell phone, and one hand on the bead bag, or one hand on the steering wheel, and one hand on the bead bag. No two-handed chanting. Right? That is our japa. But we can chant the holy names of the Lord in addition to our japa all day long, while we are doing our housework, while we are driving to the office, while we're doing whatever. But that is additional chanting. Our japa we should protect and put a fence around and not let anything come in contact with our japa. So that should be focused and exclusively meditating on Krishna to the extent we can control the mind and keep trying. But then in addition to that, one can chant all aspects of life. And soon, by doing this very focused japa, one will then naturally and spontaneously be able to chant the holy names of the Lord. So that is how we can do that. Palika Mataji, you had a question? Or a comment?
Yeah, Hare Krishna Prabhuji, very beautiful class. Thank you so much for a wonderful class. One question is, I'm not yet still clear on that faithless and doubter. Because faithless, I believe, they also know all the shastras, and then they do not have faith, you said. And then doubters also, they have completely exhausted of all the shastras, and they're still doubting about the results. So what is that actually the difference between the faithless and a doubter?
A faithless is they don't know all the shastra, but they have heard many different things, but they don't really know what to do, which one to really believe in. They don't know where to put their faith, and so they're somewhat, we can say, lost in the matter. So they haven't yet identified their faith. The doubter is they in their need, they know this is it, this is the knowledge, but still they can't, it doesn't lead to action because they just doubt this will ever result in anything good. So it's not such a black and white line, but it's an aspect. So, and we have maybe seen some personal experience of this. People are coming and they're hearing this philosophy for years and years. I mean, decades. But still, the doubt remains. And so it doesn't transpire to actions. It doesn't mean, though, decades of practicing devotional service, you won't remain to have questions. That's different, right? So as soon as there is practice, it means then you are no longer a doubter, because the doubter still stifles one, because it doesn't lead to action. Remember, the whole goal of this chapter is to apply knowledge to our action, right? So as soon as we begin to practice, it doesn't mean that, if I have questions, I'm a doubter. No, because I'm having higher level new questions, developing questions, right? But if I can't get off the basic initial ones to lead me to act, that is that doubter type person. Whereas the faithless is just a little confused. What is all that? I don't know what to do. Some person says this, someone says that. I don't know. That is the faithless.
So can we say like the faithless, they are not sure, so basically they can get easily influenced by any school of thought, like they'll go in this way, sometimes when they hear that they might go the other way. Can I say it that way?
Yeah, you can say that that they're very pliable in that regard. Yep. And that's how we describe the Kanishta Adhikari, right? The faith is very soft. And so there is some risk, danger, because they may be deviated to another path because their faith is still developing. Whereas the Madhyam Adhikari has firm faith, so they are fixed in that process. And we know that the other criteria for determining our level is knowledge, right? So faith and knowledge of Shastra and faith, they couple together to lead to this determination in devotional service.
Second question is a very basic question, and I know it's kind of
No such thing?
like this basic question of which we keep on hearing every time, like part and parcel of Krishna. Can you little bit explain?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
is it like the same in quality? I'm really not still confused about exactly. If you can tell me when we say part of Krishna, what is it, and parcel of Krishna, what it is.
Yeah.
Each of them, if you can explain a little bit.
Yeah. So so part of Krishna means exactly that. We're similar in quality to Krishna, just as a drop of ocean water is part of the ocean. So it carries the same chemical constitution as the entire of the ocean. But it is quantitatively very small. The amount of salt in that drop of ocean water is very tiny compared to the amount of salt in the ocean. So the living entity doesn't think, I'm part of Krishna, I'm Krishna. Just as a drop of ocean water doesn't think that is the ocean. So part of Krishna means that we have the similar qualities to Krishna, but quantitatively very small. Parcel means that we are in eternally separated existence from Krishna. So unlike the drop of ocean water, when you put it back in the ocean, it becomes indistinguishable. we as spirit soul are always partial, meaning we are separated in identity, not in relationship, but in identity. Krishna is Krishna, you are you. That partial aspect is eternal. And that's why Krishna says right in the beginning of the second chapter, never is there time that I did not exist, nor you, nor ever will there be a time where you shall cease to be, or I. Because the idea of that combining back never happens. Mamaivam sho jiva loke jiva bhuta sanatana. That we are eternally fragmental parts. So the part aspect refers to our separated individual identity. The parcel aspect, The parcel aspect means we are separated eternally. And the part means we come from Krishna. And that's why these qualities that we are looking to achieve, why we should have so much confidence we can acquire them? Because Krishna has them. We are we are the same qualities as Krishna in small quantities. So that is nature of the soul. That is why our soul is Sat Chit and Ananda, and Krishna is Sat Chit and Ananda. Because our soul is coming from him. Is that okay?
Yeah, and that is the reason why, because of this concept of parcel which we have in Krishna consciousness, that makes it distinct from the Mayavadi philosophy, because here we are saying that we are going to be eternally always separate, whereas they talk about the concept of merging
Yes.
with the Brahman. So,
Yes. Exactly.
okay.
That's the art of that bogus philosophy, is you pick pieces of what you like and you distort other things. But Krishna gives both aspects very clearly, over and over and over again, in Bhagavad Gita, in other places.
Question, you touched upon that fan concept. It's not there in the book also, Bhagavad Gita. I think Origin Prabhu explained it, but he said it a little bit something different also. So, he said that the reason why the fan thing is something, what he said, that is because of our because we have to preach. That's why those prarabdha karma is still not being taken away by Krishna, though one have still becomes a devotee. So I was a little bit confused on that part, because as you rightly said, that prarabdha karma, the reactions will slow down.
Yeah.
But then he said that reason why it's there and Krishna is not taking it out is because of the fact that he needs the devotees to preach to the other conditioned souls here. So could you...
Yeah, it's a little bit close. So the prarabdha karma, the last manifestation of our karma is this body. Right? So the last aspect of my karma is this body. But this body is the vehicle that we use in rendering service to Krishna. So when one is fully purified, then that last aspect of prarabdha karma is destroyed, and one returns home back to Godhead. So all the aparabdha karmas may be destroyed, all the other, the bijam and kutam will be nullified in the heart. And the last semblance of our karma is our material body. And that is the body that is being used to deliver the devotional service. Now, when a devotee comes at the request of the spiritual master or through Krishna to render service, as Srila Prabhupada, as a Senapati Bhakta comes, that body is not prarabdha karma. So Srila Prabhupada, when he comes, it is not a manifestation of his prarabdha karma. That is, again, he assumes this body in order to render some service for Krishna. Well, there's a different concept. But in our devotional service, that fan analogy is not quite perfect, because it doesn't stop because there's still that prarabdha karma of our body. And once we are fully purified of all of our misgivings and ready to enter the spiritual realm, then we'll lose that body also. That is the final aspect of our prarabdha karma. So that the analogy that Prabhupada uses and Bojram Prabhu quotes is to speak about the question becomes, if all of my reactions are burned to ashes with transcendental knowledge, why am I still getting some suffering while I'm practicing devotional service? So the point is that, yes, you have unplugged the fan, but there's still some residual that is coming and spinning, right? But that will stop also. But the ultimate stop is when we go back home, back to Godhead.
So basically, that when we are switching off the electricity, that is basically we are starting the devotional service. Can I say it that way?
Yeah, we have taken to devotional service. We are no longer performing any sinful activities. So I'm no longer adding fuel to that fan, right? And by the mercy of Krishna, who says, Aham tvam sarva papebhyo, I'm taking all of your sinful reactions, I am going to slow this down ultimately. So yes, as soon as we start devotional service and stop our sinful life. I can't do devotional service and continue sinning. Right?
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Shaligram Prabhu, did you have a question?
Yeah, Prabhuji, thank you for the class. The faith that I understand is a gradual building process, right? As we interact with devotees, as we hear more, as we chant more, our faith builds. But at the same time, we go through challenges with our faith because of our attachments, because of our anarthas, whatever. So, trying to understand what is the recommendation for devotees when we go through this phase. What should they be doing when their faith is challenged?
Yeah. So, in that those when our faith is challenged, and actually it's a great blessing of Krishna, because when we take the shelter of Krishna during those times where we are challenged, and we double up our efforts, increase our commitment to Krishna, when we overcome that obstacle, actually our faith cements and expands much more significantly. So by having that challenge in our faith and overcoming it by practice of devotional service, our faith then becomes even stronger, more harder. It solidifies. Were it not for that challenge, actually our faith would not mature and solidify as quickly. So the devotee actually is, I don't say enthusiastic, but some are actually enthusiastic in experiencing those challenges, because the other side of that challenge is great solidification of their faith. Now, how to go through that process and not have that challenge of our faith break us? Right, that's then becomes the question, because, well, it only has the benefit if I carry forward and overcome that challenge. And that is where devotee association is so critical for us. Having strong relationships in bhakti, having strong devotee association, where we can get protected, because as you said, in the company of devotees, our faith is protected, our faith is inspired. And Rupa Goswami, thus he explains in Nectar of Instruction, the fourth verse, that we should have very rich relationships in sadhu sangha, in devotional service. Because yes, those times are going to come where our faith is challenged. But by the support and love and prayers of devotees, we can overcome those moments of challenges. And when we do, our faith becomes so much stronger and so much more solidified. So, the recommendation is to apply our knowledge. Okay, when faith becomes challenged, no, this is right. Krishna says there's nothing no sublime. So think back and reflect back on our knowledge. Embrace the relationships we have in devotional service, and become more sincere and determined, even if we're not, our faith is a little bit shaken. And by that, we'll be able to overcome that obstacle. Just like, we tell our children when there is something fearful, but it's not really fearful, say, just don't worry, keep going. You'll be fine. Just keep going. You'll be fine. There's nothing to worry, right? Sometimes we have to talk ourselves through that. Sometimes we need a devotee to help us through this. And that way we can make progress and know that the other side of overcoming that shaken faith is stronger faith. Just like when you exercise, you break muscles. You actually tear muscles when you exercise. But what happens when that muscle rebuilds? It's stronger. It's more potent. So similarly, when our faith is shaken a little bit, it's like, tearing that part of faith. But when it rebuilds, it's much stronger. So, is that okay, Prabhu?
Thank you, Babaji.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Anything else? Okay. If not, thank you very much. So next week we'll begin discussing chapter 5. We'll discuss the first half of chapter 5. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki jai. Hare Krishna, everyone.